The next thing on our schedule is Dr. Chisholm. For Betty, who's visiting, and in case, let's see if we have a new face, I think everyone knows this, but we, as a priority this year, want to make sure we stay focused on our scholarship and also learn more about what each other is doing in this area. So in December, Bob Rono shared his work, and James kindly volunteered to be next. And of course, when James is done, the baton passes to who would like to share next month. So be thinking about whether, around February, 12th or something, is your day to share. Okay, James.
Great, thank you. Yeah, the whole thing. Okay, so I really appreciate the opportunity to do this, and I have to say this is one of the reasons why I wanted to come to you about a couple of years ago. When I started to sense around me as the only English educator in an English department at a small rural school, I felt like there were limited opportunities for collaboration, and then I got here, and now I'm struggling to minimize the number of collaborations. It's really, and not only collaboration with colleagues, but also collaboration with parents, with teachers, and students. And that's what I want to talk a little bit about today. And in a practical way, I want to share an anecdote as well, because I think this is a really useful exercise for all of us to engage in. Last week, I stopped in by Caroline's office and chatted with her, as I do and we do, and we started to talk about graphic novels, as we do every once in a while, and I learned something about her that I didn't know before, and it had to do with her interest in sports and graphic novels as a teaching tool and a potential research opportunity. Well, then it dawned on me immediately that I had just seen a call from the English journal I read and tried to write in, that was calling for a special issue on sports and education and how we teach through sports in the English classroom. The deadline was today, unfortunately, but now every time I see something like that, I'm going to think of Caroline. And
email the editor, because sometimes you can email and just ask.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Yeah.
That's inside.
I think.
As a former editor.
Okay.
You're like,
That's.
more
I didn't think of that.
submissions.
Yeah. Right.
okay, so and then I started thinking in preparation for this presentation, which I was doing last night. I was thinking about Bob's presentation and the things I took away from that. And although Bob has a really different approach to research than I do, his questions stuck with me. I found his questions compelling, and I was proud to be associated with somebody who's asking such interesting and compelling questions. And so when I started thinking about, what can I tell you today about my research, I thought maybe I should frame it by providing you with the questions that I asked, and Bob also had some images, some graphs, and some tables that I found also telling. It kind of narrated his research in a way that I can understand it. And so I have pictures too. They're not graphs, but they're pictures, and I hope they stick. So that maybe when something crosses your desk that reminds you of my work, you can pass it along to me. And that might be an opportunity for a teaching collaboration or a research collaboration. So basically, my research falls into three categories. I do research on discussion. I do research on the concept of multimodality, or the use of more than the linguistic mode in educational settings. And then I do research on literacy learning. There are a few beliefs, but as I started to write these, I noticed that I could go on and on and on. But I think it's also important to kind of share with you what I believe about teaching and learning. I believe that speaking mediates thinking. That is, we come to know, just like writing, right? That writing mediates your thinking. You come to know what you think by doing these, by engaging in speaking practices and writing practices. I believe that literacy is a multimodal social practice that has particular affordances in specific contexts. I believe, like Bakhtin, a Soviet literary theorist, that our utterances are populated by the voices of others, so that what I'm saying now is informed by all of the voices that have come in my past, as well as the voices I imagine in the future. And I also believe in this concept of transmediation that comes out of semiotic theory, the notion that recasting meanings across science systems, from the visual, for example, into the linguistic science system, is a generative practice. It produces non-redundant meanings, right? So that when a interpretive dancer performs and somebody asks her, what did that mean, or him, what did that mean, the interpretive dancer says, if I could have told you in the linguistic science system, I would not have danced it, right? So these are some of the beliefs that I find compelling. I try to use to drive my analysis of data. I cite sociocultural theory in most of my writing. I cite multiliteracies in the work out of the New London Group. I cite critical and literary theory, including Bakhtin, as I mentioned, but also Rosenblatt, and the notion that meaning is created in collaboration between the reader, the text, and the context, and that there isn't just one meaning to be culled from any particular text. And then I'm also playing around in multimodal social semiotic theory that comes from Günter Kress and Van Leeuwen, and I'm not sure I'm comfortable right now in talking any more about that. I'm just dabbling a little bit. Some of the methods I employ include microethnographic discourse analysis, so looking very closely at language and how it creates meaning, how it informs learning opportunities, shapes them, how it precludes learning opportunities in some situations. I use critical discourse analysis, so I believe that power is embedded in language exchanges, and it's hard to avoid. Once you start looking through that lens, you see it everywhere. So Jim G. and those folks. I also draw on visual discourse analysis. I just finished a paper on that. This work comes out of Peggy Albers, Georgia State, and other people who have been playing around with the notion of multimodal or visual discourse analysis as a method to understand data in educational settings. And then I also complement most of that work with ethnographic narrative analyses and qualitative methods, field notes, things of that sort, interviews with participants. So the first publication I had was a publication in the Journal of Literacy Research. And the question that we posed in that publication had to do with how three bidialectal speakers, so speakers of Standard English, Standard American English, and African American Vernacular English, made meetings during a small group inquiry-based discussion about power, about identity, and about language variation in the United States. So it was a 3-day instructional unit in which dialects were laid out on the table, and people asked, okay, how do we make meanings? How do we judge people by the way that they speak and things of that nature? And so the question that we examined was, how does students' engagement in an inquiry-based discussion about these concepts support their sociolinguistic content learning? So the notion that there are grammatical structures, there is a pattern and a coherent structure to different language varieties in English, not just standard written English. And we then mapped out, and this is the picture I provided, an argumentation structure. And so that was kind of a fun way to expose the ways in which students were generating claims and backing up those claims with evidence, this kind of disciplinary literacy practice that's so respected and encouraged in ELA classrooms. So we thought that this was an important part of the curriculum that's often left unattended to because we focus on traditional grammar, skill and drill exercises. This is a different way to approach the subject of language beyond the mechanical features, or to include the mechanical features as well, but to do it in a critical way. The second publication I want to talk about is the use of the combination, I suppose, of the multimodal concept that intrigues me and discussion. So when students are asked to create a multimodal product, how do they talk about it, and how's that talk different from when they're asked to write an essay about it? I mean, I think both things are valuable things to do in an English classroom. But this, for this particular image, which the student entitled Macbeth's Overreaching Ambition, the question that guided that analysis is, how does student talk during collaborative multimodal instructional activities shape the interpretations that students make about literature during small group and whole class discussions? We found we found a lot of value in this image because it provided a meaning, like I was saying before, that wasn't possible in the linguistic science system alone. Okay, we have a scene there that doesn't exist in Macbeth. Okay, and the students talked through that scene. It was really interesting. The other kind of purpose I thought was maybe this would be a teaser for you. If ever you have the extra time in your life and interest to actually read one of these things, then maybe this will serve as a teaser of sorts. So the article that came out that I mentioned last time we met as a group was on digital storytelling in a place-based composition course. And this is in the Journal of Adolescent and Adult Literacy. And really the question, it was a case study, and the question was, how does digital storytelling mediate this particular student's meaning-making about this concept, this really robust concept of place, right? Place. There's so many ways in which you could use that in an English course. And what I did was I conducted a multimodal analysis of that work. For example, I took each frame out of the digital story and examined that. First of all, I reproduced the language that she used to voice over the image. I examined, the time that was given to each one of those frames. I kind of explained it to somebody else. So this is what the picture is, and then I made some meanings made some interpretations about how she was engaging in compositional practices, traditional highly valued elements of composition, like in providing a setting, for example, and these kind of long-held notions of what makes it for a story. And then I looked at the multimodality of it too, that there's metaphor here, there's playing with space and time that you don't have in the linguistic science system. So I was trying to make the argument that there were particular meanings that she was making, certain textures that were available. For example, when she's talking here, I think she's talking about she's sitting here with her father, and the tree is a mirror image for how her father is bending over toward her to have this conversation. So I tried to talk about the value of juxtaposing the language with the image in those cases. It's a really beautiful digital story, which is also available online, which is one of the affordances of that particular journal, which I found to be excellent. I think more journals need to provide for those multimodal resources to actually see the whole thing play out in space and time. I have a chapter in a volume coming out in May that looks at time in particular, and looks at the concept of chronotope, which is a Bakhtinian concept that basically means time-space. And it looks at three students as they engage in conversations about literature over the course of a semester, so at 4 time points. My questions were, how do traditional inquiry-based and multimodal tasks shape students' responses to literary text? And then how does time contextualize students' responses to literacy tasks? I thought I was going to have a celebration today, but I haven't heard back yet about this paper. I really thought that this would be the focus, but I didn't want to kind of be that risky before I knew. But this is the concept that I've been thinking about for about a year now. This is a paper I presented at ARA last year with my friend Adam Loretto, who was the teacher in my dissertation study, who's now a doctoral candidate at the University of Pittsburgh, where I graduated from. And he's on the job market this year. So I have a really great relationship with him. We published together before. But this concept that we're looking at is tension and interpretive authority. And the questions are also Bakhtinian questions. They're looking at sort of the notion of monologue, or the IRE pattern of classroom discourse in classrooms where a teacher asks a question, students give the response, and the teacher evaluates it or provides some sort of feedback. What we were trying to do in this classroom was to make it more dialogic, so it's more conversational. So we're talking about ideas, students are talking to each other, they're taking up ideas that other people have to extend or deepen the conversation. So that's one element. And then the other part is to look at these, what Bakhtin calls centripetal or centrifugal forces. So the centripetal force is the notion, the party line. Bakhtin calls it the voice of the father. The standards, the language of the standards would fall under this umbrella. Centrifugal is just messiness, it's chaos, it's disorganization. The student who says something just to disrupt the conversation. And we find this over and over again, kind of naturally occurring across classroom discussions of literary texts. So what we're trying to do is to map that out over a 45-minute discussion in 2 of his classrooms, and to make some arguments about what would it mean if a teacher kind of understood in the moment where the conversation is being tensioned toward. If we're pulling toward dialogism, if we're pulling toward monologism, if we're pulling toward the centrifugal force, this chaos, or if we're pulling toward centripetality, or whatever Bakhtin calls it, right? This kind of, the teacher has the only authority, the only interpretation that matters. And so what would it mean if we pulled, and if we knew where we were in that situation, and pulled back, and allowed students to do some of the pulling too? It's a work in progress. So the future, speaking of time. This Nystrom Offit project I started yesterday, actually, at Fairdale High School. We're looking specifically again, I'm looking at discussion again, working with the teacher there, who's also a former student of mine, to look at a back-channeling tool, which is a term that comes out of linguistics. so we do this at a lot of conferences nowadays. I know I've done it at ARA before, where people are giving a speech, and we could be doing it right now. I didn't think of that. And you're kind of tweeting what you're thinking, what your thoughts are. I'm monopolizing the conversation here. You might have ideas. You might be thinking about something completely different from this. But you could tweet that in a sense. But the cool thing about today's meet is it's free. Fairdale High School is now allowed to use phones. It's a free app, and it produces a digital record, an archive of the conversation. So I'm going to be recording the live face-to-face Socratic circles that are happening in the classroom, which, by the way, are phenomenal. I mean, I had goosebumps yesterday. I was so happy with what I saw, just in terms of the discourse norms that students knew, and the way that they were treating each other with respect, but also the really wonderful rhetorical strategies they were engaged in, and also the meaning making that was taking place. It was just phenomenal. I was so happy. It's going to be a great study. So what I want to do is compare the offline and the online conversation. How do they match up? How are silenced voices in the classroom getting a chance to say something about the literature, which we need to value, and sometimes we don't get access to those voices. When I was a teacher, the most quiet students were oftentimes the most insightful thinkers. Right? I'm also engaged in a multi-year critical ethnography project with Kathy Whitmore, McKayka Overstreet, a doctoral student, and Janie Andrus. We just came back from Chicago presenting some preliminary findings from work at Family Scholar House. So this is me building a playground, which was part of the project on November 1st. I'm not quite as active as the other people in the image there, but it was a wonderful opportunity. This first semester, we've really just been collecting field notes and interviewing people, the staff of that particular place, and trying to understand how literacy is learned. Ultimately, we want to work with the parents of Family Scholar House and provide them or work with them in developing research tools to study their children's, their adolescents, their pre-adolescents' own literacy learning. Eventually, we're going to ask teachers from the district to come in on the project and offer the opportunity for parents and teachers to teach the teachers, parents and children rather, and adolescents to teach teachers about how they create digital stories and how they can research literacy. So it's very exciting. Finally, this is the last project I'm involved in right now. It's the Center for Literacy Education. We're working across departments in our group, and it comes to you often, to look at how our own prospective teachers are learning about are developing a worldview. Really, is the most simple way to kind of put it. What is their worldview vis-a-vis literacy's learning in the 21st century? And what kind of data do we have to look at and to track over time? And we're looking at their admissions essays. We're looking at across probably 8 courses right now. I know we have 90 students enrolled in that survey on live text. We're looking at this particular activity called Draw a Teacher as a way to kind of get their insights into what do they think, what do they do when you ask them to draw a teacher? What emerges? And I would tell you the triangle-shaped woman emerges more often than you would believe if I told you. And then, so this, I chose this example because it gets at a language ideology, right? That irregardless is where I lived in Eastern Kentucky. Everyone said irregardless. It was almost a patterned feature of the language variety. So she drew, when asked to draw a teacher, she drew a triangle-shaped teacher, saying, irregardless, in the speech bubble, you can't see it, so I reproduced it. She said, irregardless is not a word. Ugh. So, what is here that we can look at in terms of what the worldview is? Is this what an English teacher is supposed to be? I hope at the end of the program she's not drawing the same teacher, right? That there's some sort of transformation, but who knows? The other thing, where are the children, right? Where are the students? And actually, I should mention too that we asked them to draw, for this particular one, we asked them to draw themselves in the classroom. So it's just interesting. You get everything you could imagine, but you always get the triangle-shaped dress. So Jenny asked me to just touch briefly on our group, which is really one of the most exciting things I'm involved in right now. I think we get together once a month to talk about our teaching and our research, and it's profoundly rewarding. And it started by just reflecting on our own practice. So this notion of sharing with each other our own literacy histories, reading some common texts, some things that could frame our thinking, defining a vision, and then also, in practical ways, we want to market the program. We want to brand it. We want to make it attractive for people, doc students including, to come here, as well as our future colleagues, right, where there's a search going on now. And we want them to see that and to have a better sense of who we are than just maybe looking at our Vitas or whatever it happens to be. So right now we're in the process of developing. We've already written grant proposals and conference proposals, but we're really trying to use the time that we meet every month to write things down, to actually get things into paper, because that can be difficult when we have service research and teaching opportunities that are pressing for our time. But that's about all I have for today. But I really look forward to hearing about all of your interesting work, and I hope that if anything kind of resonates with you, that you'll let me know about it, because I try to do a lot. And so if I don't know about something, I want to know about it, if nothing else. So, thanks.
Questions for James?
Yes, Steve.
On the back channel thing, James, that's something that I've been doing. I've been teaching people to do in their classes. You can take the Twitter app and actually get the code, the embeddable code, and so you can insert that Twitter app live anywhere, Wiki. You can even do it in a PowerPoint, believe it or not. And so the thing I'm trying to get teachers to think about is, what would happen if you had that live back channel running on your screen, right, so that normal time that you're boring people to death with some PowerPoint, you're actually seeing those kinds of firing off of ideas and questions. Now, when we've done it, you can guess what happened. You had the usual stupid question popping up, which goes to your thing about exactly. And but it's a fascinating thing to watch. We started it at DOS, which is kind of where the whole allowing kids to use their technology in the school kind of started. But I think what I love about Fairdale is, and I know Fairdale pretty well, is Brad, number one, the principal out there. He's got his head screwed on right. He's starting to see stuff. He reminds me of Newman, who's over at Western High School, another really good place for this kind of stuff going on. So I'm really curious to see if we could convince a teacher there to actually allow that back channel to live.
Oh, it's going to, and today's Meet allows it to populate on the screen.
Right.
It's going to be visible.
Cool.
Yeah, and the other great use for the back channeling tool is when you're screening films or segments of film, right? Other than just sitting there and watching what's happening, you can engage with what you're seeing.
Exactly.
It's really powerful, really wonderful way to enhance
the sort of Walking Dead effect. In other words, the fact that you're literally watching something and then tweeting all kinds of interesting thoughts about it. Yeah, I think it's really a cool idea.
Good.
We're experimenting with that with students doing observations in the classroom live.
Oh yeah.
And using today's Meet that I'm watching as they're all in different classrooms.
Right, because they can get into that room, right? They have the room access.
So we're at Westport. We're doing that because they have their iPads that they can go into their observations, and so it's just an interesting. It's hard for them. Like their feedback is, it's really, I get distracted. I want to watch what's going on, and then I'm typing it, and I get distracted. So we don't know how to work with observations, but it's a really cool thing to watch. I can watch it. I can see what's happening while they're in their classrooms. But and so I ask them, would it be hard for you if I sent you a question?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, you'd have to find it first, right?
Yeah. You'd have to.
So we're messing around.
But the thing, though, I think that's fascinating about what you're doing is, because we looked at this discourse thing when I was actively involved with Knowledge Forum, was that you always started out the discourse thing and it was very disorganized and chaotic, like you were describing. But then the more kids got engaged with it, it became tighter and tighter and tighter, and the stuff really developed into really good thinking that was going on.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the focal point in that one article that I hope gets published soon is that a student comes up with what the teacher wanted the central understanding to be. Now, how did that occur? The teacher could have said it.
Right.
Oh, we read this Beowulf text, we read Grendel. There are some biases inherent because of the point of view of the narrator. We came to that after 45 minutes, but the way it happened was students were using their own language practices, colloquial, they were talking to each other in a very comfortable way, and the teacher the teacher interjected at the most critical points. He let them do what they were doing, but when it started to get centrifugal, pulled it right back in. And it led to this wonderful moment where the students created the knowledge that was the aim of the class, period. It's wonderful.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah, we keep talking about this because there was so many connections to other people's work, or now you see a connection and have an idea. But in particular, this today's meet, something I want to now learn more about. I'm curious about if it's just when the classroom is sitting here, or if when our students are out student teaching, if they can somehow be engaged in dialogue. So perhaps that's some professional development that we'd all like to have in terms of how to make use of that technology.
Yeah, I would love to have James do a little PD on how to make some of that happen in our
Oh,
how rhetoric practicing in a teacher-ed classroom and discussing how to ramp that up. I mean, as you were speaking, I thought, I need to do some of that, but I don't know how. I need James.
So let's not forget, so whatever kind of communications we need to kind of think about that.
yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing. The next thing on the agenda is our summer, what's showing this summer. And so, Desi had a doctor's appointment that was scheduled. As many of you, I think, know, she's having some health issues, and so she's having these appointments that she gets short notice on. So anyway, she intended to be here to talk about summer schedule, but it is due today. And so Wanda's passing it around so you can take a look at it. If you would please not just look for your name and the courses, but any other things that might have been overlooked or forgotten. We're as concerned about what's not there as what is there. Because, you know, if we don't put a course on the books that's supposed to be there,
They're all different.
then we lose priority.
This is what we're looking at right now, guys.
Okay, so
I didn't
that's
see
in
that
front
one
of
yet.
you. So
This is the next thing
Yeah,
we're
this
doing.
is the summer thing, right?
take a minute to look it over.
So you're looking to see your classes and if they're there.
And see if there's any other classes that should be there.
And note any changes. I'm just going to give you about 5 minutes to have a look at it.
You are a young daddy, that's all I got to say. You're very jealous of your Tony. Yeah.
You're the EDAP.
Yeah, we got the EDAP. Would you like to have?
Can you double check to make sure that 611 normal?
Okay, she wants us to check 611. Some people.
I know, Billy's paying the butt.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, you're there.
innovation.
You want to know what it says, or?
You change the
I
title.
changed the title.
Okay.
Innovation and Leadership and Teaching.
Was this your old museum one, or?
No, it's the Summer Portfolio Institute.
Okay. Oh, cool. So this is how somebody can get some credit hours for working for you.
Karen was not a stupid person. She was a smart cookie. And I just changed the title to more accurately reflect what it is.
Yeah, yeah. It's moved away from that.
And it's also moved away from just being math.
Well, what are you teaching, James?
I don't want to do that. That's why.
Then I'm taking this away.
Well, yeah, I have found that it's impacted my writing.
Yeah. I mean, I do also think that I'm going to have more time than I actually do in the summer break. Somehow there's always something that case.
It's wrong.
That comes
Well, I'm glad I looked at it.
Though it might be interesting if you wanted to offer a course like on dialogue. And
Oh,
do,
right.
do like a 1 week class on dialogue in the classroom.
I love that. Right now, I'm doing courses like that as independent studies.
Well, maybe you could offer it as dialogue in the classroom, have it be cross
Second
department.
term
That's
is,
a great idea. I didn't think about that.
June 9th is, I think, the Monday that right now
That
we're
way you
thinking
might
is
be
gonna
able to
be
get some research out of it.
the best we can do for our teachers in the classroom.
Yeah, right.
Because we've already wiped, officially the university schedule starts June 2nd, and already stuff is going on. But we can't start any later than June 9th and even have a second term. So the 4:30 courses can go ahead and start on June 2nd or June 9th. It's flexible. There's a problem with starting on June 2nd because teachers don't really want to be coming to class when they're trying to, tie up their classroom and get everything finished up for the year. But they can come to class. In the morning or afternoon classes, we're trying to move them all to June 9th
But don't
start.
forget that there's also, if you wanted to use the Westport classroom on the June 2nd, in the June 2nd session or in the May session, the classes could still go on there.
Yeah,
If the
so
school's still in
Westport
action.
is, that's something that we'd want to know, Harry, to make sure we know, like, if there's just one classroom and who might like to be there and that sort of thing. And if it's all day long, so we could have like a Westport class in the morning and in the afternoon, or what that framework is. But
I know they shut down like near the end of June, through July.
Yeah.
right, so it would be summer 2. So if there's a summer 2 course,
Or you could even do summer 1 in the evening.
well, summer 1. Yes, so that could
As
be,
long as it's
the
there.
May, what some people call the Maymester. Summer 1 is that 2.5 weeks in June for an intensive course that would be after school every day.
If you want to let me know how many classrooms you need or the times of those classes, I'll get it to Stacy.
Okay, so any of you that are thinking you're interested in your course being at Westport for delivery, please let me know ASAP. It's not, when we turn this in today, if it doesn't say Westport on it, if the schedule doesn't say Westport, that's okay. What'll happen is, we just need to right now, make sure we get the classrooms we need here in this building. But we do need to know, because it's not too soon for Stacy to know, because there's a lot of
Here,
other
just
things
take
going
my
on in that
binder, put that
building, and we need that room or we don't need that room. So you could email, actually, if you email both Harry and I, then I'll know for the schedule, and Harry will know for talking with Stacy. Melissa?
Unrelated to that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, I think that's.
Something I think we've done in past summers is there have been a look at what were the various courses that we know our MATs in particular would be taken, so we could make sure that they were sandwiched appropriately. And I don't remember if we've done that the last couple of years, but I remember that something that became an issue with my technology class last summer is that because I'm doing it in the afternoon, I was getting kind of squeezed on both ends, and I had a couple students in a situation where the course enrollment times initially were actually overlapping. Is someone taking a broader
Yeah, we
look
did that.
at what those times are?
So here's what we did, is for the MAT, the beginning people, there's 3 courses they have to take. We have one of them happening in May 1 of them, or is summer 1 in May, one of them's in June, and one of them's in July, because we only have enough students to offer one section. And that's all set. And so we're looking for that, because if your technology course is in June, you're gonna see,
What about
exploring teaching is in June, because then general methods is in July.